Hello, friend, and welcome back to episode number 18 of my 31-day challenge, where every single day I am answering your questions about creating a career or a business that you love. And in today's episode, I'm kind of thinking this might be a short and sweet episode. The question is, should you go all in on virtual reality? So we'll dive into my thoughts on that. If you've got a question of your own, why don't you reach out and ask it to me? Ask it to me? Is that English? We'll go with that. You can hit me up on social media. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, AlexMakesVR. If you've got a longer question that you want to email over, that's alexmakesvr@gmail.com. And every single day, I send out a daily newsletter to remind you when these episodes go live, but also to give you a bit of a recap about what I talk about in the episode. If you want to sign up for that, head over to alexmakesvr.com. So, should you go all in on virtual reality? In short, yes. Yes. I think you should go all in on VR if you meet a certain criteria. The kind of person that wants to and needs to go all in on VR is the kind of person that, number one, believes in the technology. You're not just someone that reads headlines and thinks it's fashionable and sees that Google and Facebook and Apple are all kind of investing in this area and think, oh, maybe one day, if I get into it now, maybe one day I'm going to be a millionaire because, the technology is going to take off and I can say I was one of the early people in it. You can't be in it just for that. That can play a piece of it. That can play a role. Like, it's not a bad thing if that's one of the things that's driving you. But more than that, you need to believe wholeheartedly that this technology will fundamentally change the world one day. So that's my belief, is that if you're going to go all in VR, you should, number one, be really passionate and believe in the technology. Because then if 20 years down the line it all goes horribly wrong, like, let's face it, not that it went horribly wrong, but there's people that have been in VR since the 60s, since the 80s. Like, there's been several waves of VR, and every single time it's had its wave, it's had its kind of its spotlight, its moment in the spotlight, it's had its glory days, and then it's died down again because the world wasn't ready for it. So it could well be that happens again. Are you willing to risk your livelihood and your career on that? That's what you've got to ask yourself. So number one, you've got to be passionate, you've got to believe in the technology. Number two, you've got to be a super resilient person to work in this industry. I feel like I have done a lot in my life that prepared me for being in an industry where no is the default setting. So my job in television was working in development, which is the bit where you are coming up with the ideas and pitching it to commissioners at broadcasters. And so, as you can imagine, with a job like that, 99.9% of your job is getting rejected. 99% of your ideas are getting tossed out. 99% of your ideas are not making it to see daylight. That is kind of similar in VR, in that people don't really, not that people don't want it, but they don't really see the need for it right now. People see the big sweaty black box that you have to wear on your face and they think, why would anyone do that? A client might not realize just how beneficial VR can be for their company. They might think, well, what's the point when I can just do a traditional film? Or what's the point when I can make a mobile app and everyone's already got an iPhone? What's the point of me spending all that money on it? A lot of your career in VR will be getting rejected, and you've got to have the resilience and the passion to push past that and go, no, I'm going to keep on going because I know that this technology can change someone's life. It can change someone's business. I really believe that it is actually a brilliant technology that can actually totally transform someone's way of life or way of working. And to some extent, you've got to be a risk taker. You've got to be willing to kind of like be amongst the first kind of pioneers, because even though this technology has been around for a long time, in its current form, in this new wave of VR that's really been kind of, I guess, generating momentum for the last 5 years, it's still so small. It's still a really, really small industry, and it's still an underdog in most people's opinion. There is no kind of guarantee that this technology is going to be the next thing, but you've got to be a risk taker to kind of to bet your career and bet your livelihood on the fact that this technology is going to make it. It is going to see it through, which I know is quite similar to being passionate about it and believing in the technology. But ultimately, it is a risk being involved. Of course it is. It's the equivalent of, instead of investing, a small amount monthly in the stock market in like an index fund, for anyone that knows about finance, that's a fairly safe bet. It's a fairly proven... There's a proven track in that, there's decades of people doing that and proving that works. That method works over time, over 20 years or whatever. You're pretty much guaranteed to make X amount of percentage a return every single year. That in itself will build wealth, very risk-free, basically. It's not totally risk-free, but it's more low risk than others. And then there's other people that take their last $5,000 and they bet the farm on one particular stock. And, even the best investors in the world, like Warren Buffett, say that this is absolutely not what you should do. And even the best economists in the world would not be able to predict accurately which stocks to bet. But if you bet on a particular company, I think my dad told me once that he had the option to buy Apple stocks in like the 70s or 80s or something, when like the first generation of Apple computers were coming out. And obviously now, if he had done it, they would be worth a lot of money, but he didn't. Story of my family's life, really. Just so close to being generationally wealthy and just always missing the mark. I don't know what that says about my potential, but anyway, if you did that, if you'd bet the farm on Amazon or Apple or a Google, then how wealthy would you be now? And yes, it would be a massive risk, but the return would be absolutely ginormous. And I think that is where we're at with VR as a technology. It is a bit of a risk because it's still not 100% proven. It's still not 100% in its current form. It's still not 100% going to be the next thing. But the truth is, if you're in it early and it does take off, that risk, the reward of taking that risk is going to be massive. To some extent, I feel like I credit my career on the fact that I took a risk with making a VR rom-com when no one wanted a VR rom-com. Still no one really wants a VR rom-com, but and that paid off for me. That was a risk that was worth it, because the return of that risk has been absolutely massive in terms of what I've been able to do since that. So I think you've got to be a little bit of a risk taker if you're in this industry. And if you're not that kind of person, it doesn't mean that you can't work in VR. It doesn't mean that you can't dabble with it. It just means that maybe you should consider keeping, 50% of your work in traditional film and editing or whatever it is that you do, or diversify a little bit and have multiple things going on, and don't just go all in and just, quit your job and that was in something totally different and go all in, unless you are passionate about technology, you believe in it, you are a risk taker, you are resilient. And if you identify with all of those things, or even just a couple of them, then I'd say it's well worth it. Because my opinion on taking the safe path in life in general is, someone once said to me, well, how that story plays out. I was considering at one point, doing the kind of I guess, the quote unquote normal thing by society standard, and looking at, okay, maybe I should settle down and get a house and put some money away in a pension. And it might have been my dad, actually, because he's like lived a bit of a crazy adventurous life and has led the way and been a role model to me in business and things like that. But he was like, well, you know how that story ends. It's a nice path for a lot of people, but you know how that story ends. Wouldn't you rather have like a totally crazy adventurous life, which is exhilarating and exciting, and do something extraordinary rather than just follow the status quo? And me being me was like, absolutely, yes, that is 100% more appealing to me than doing the kind of the normal safe thing. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You just need to know yourself. And all of this comes back to being self-aware. So those are my opinions on whether or not you should go all in on VR. Bit of a shorter episode, but I think maybe for someone that's kind of umming and ahhing about it, my personal belief is that one day VR and AR will kind of merge and become, mixed reality will just become part of our lives. In fact, one of my favourite keynotes that a friend of mine did was titled The Future of Technology is the Absence of It. And I truly believe in that. I think that it's no secret that we are moving towards this kind of blurred lines of technology and reality kind of merging, and it makes sense that we take the frame away from that. We take the rectangle that is the smartphone out of this equation, and it becomes just overlaid. It just becomes like the digital assets in the real world just become seamless. It makes sense to me. That world, I would bet all of the money in my bank account that is the future we're going to live in one day. I don't know how long it's going to take. It could take 5 years, it could take 50, but that is absolutely where we're going. As for VR in its current form, I'm not sure, but I think the future of immersive is very, very strong. And that, combined with things like AI, combined with 5G, combined with all these other machine learning, like all of this kind of the Internet of Things, everything is kind of emerging technology is going to kind of rise up together, just like in a dystopian film, only hopefully we'll keep it under control. And it will build this future where technology and reality, that's are kind of like seamlessly interlinked. That's my personal belief. So that's why I am happy to stake my livelihood and my career on this, because for me, well, if it works, it works. And I did something that I believed in. I did something I was passionate about, and I stayed true to myself, and I saw it through. And if it goes down in a fiery blaze of glory, well, at least I'll have some stories to tell, and maybe I'll do another TED Talk about how I lost all my money by making a stupid bet with a podcast audience about the future being about like immersive. Who knows? So that's it for today's episode. If you've got a question, please do send it to me on Instagram or Twitter. My handle is AlexMatesVR. You can send a longer question to alexmatesvr@gmail.com. And if you want to sign up for the daily newsletters where I send out reminders when the episodes go live and give you a bit of a recap of what's in the episode, you can sign up for that at alexmatesvr.com. I will see you tomorrow.